here. Thanks so much for joining us for today's iteration of the Digital Humanities Project's Coffee House, OI Coffee House. Just so you know, too, we will be running this into the spring. So if you know of a project or you have a project to recommend, please, do get in touch. We'd be delighted to talk to you and schedule a session, perhaps. So today we are delighted to have Stefanie Hunt-Kennedy. Oh, and by the way, I'm doing the intro. My buddy Jim Ambusky cannot be here today and sends his regrets. But so I'm introducing. So we have, and I am Martha Howard from the Omaha Institute. Somewhat coordination challenged here. So if I stop talking, it's because I can't admit people and talk at the same time. But though I can chew gum and walk at the same time. So today we have Stefanie Hunt-Kennedy, who's an associate professor of history at the University of New Brunswick. She's a historian of the Caribbean and the Atlantic world with research that focuses on the history of disability and slavery and intersecting histories of gender, race, and class in the British Caribbean and Atlantic world. Stefanie's first book, Between Fitness and Death, Disability and Slavery in the Caribbean, analyzes the relationship between disability, anti-Black racism, and slavery in the sugar-producing colonies of the British Caribbean from the 16th century to the abolition of the slave trade in 1807. The book won the 2021 Disability History Association Outstanding Book Award. Stefanie is also the author and person who put together today's project, The Laws of Enslavement and Freedom in the Anglo-Atlantic World, which looks at the laws governing enslavement and emancipation in the Anglo-Atlantic world from the 17th to the 19th centuries. And lastly, Stefanie is not only the series editor for the University of Illinois Press's Disability History series, but also is a council member of the Omaha Institute, service for which we are very grateful. And also the director of publications for the Disability History Association and the executive editor for their publication, All of Us. So welcome, Stefanie. Delighted to have you. Super excited. And just a bit of housekeeping. We will do what we usually do, which is if you have a question, please throw it in the chat and I will read it to Stefanie if you'd like, or just put up your hand. And we will, if there's a whole bunch of folks with hands up, I'll just call on people as I see them. And that way we can put questions to Stefanie after Stefanie presents. So thanks very much for being here and welcome, Stefanie.
Thanks, Martha, for that warm introduction. And thanks to everyone at the OI for having me and all the audience members for showing up. So I thought I would just give a kind of brief introduction to the kind of origin story of the project and how it's used, and then I'll give you a tour of the website itself. So as Martha said, this is a database of laws governing enslavement in the Anglo-Atlantic world, currently with an emphasis on the British Caribbean, which is kind of where I like to hang out. It started during my PhD research, actually. I was analyzing slavery law for what it revealed about disability and disabling punishments. And I found that the archival manuscripts were, most of them are in the UK, some are in the Caribbean. The published ones are kind of scattered across databases. And often scholars cited laws, but not the original laws themselves. And so I just started kind of collecting all of these laws governing enslavement, and eventually, had the idea of sharing this large collection that I had formed during the research for my dissertation and book. So, as many of you probably know, British slavery law was completely decentralized. So slave laws were passed in the colonies. They were kind of formed piecemeal in local legislatures, and then passed by the governing council. And this meant that every colony had its own laws governing slavery, and these were amended and altered multiple times throughout the 200 plus years of slavery. Um, and the scholars have kind of shown the kind of the history of that legal development, that these early 17th century laws, beginning with the 1661 Barbados Law, they kind of they a lot of the other colonies drew from the Barbados Law, and so they looked very similar. But over time, each colony had a slavery law that kind of reflected the immediate concerns of the slave owners and lawmakers in that particular colony. Um, so this means that the body of slavery law in the British world is vast. And this is another reason why I thought it would be useful to kind of create a database with all these laws in one place. Um, and scholars, of course, have also shown that these laws were often written in kind of direct response to what lawmakers and slave owners were most concerned with. So laws were written in response to enslaved people's resistance, notably. So they reflect not only the fears and anxieties of slave owners, but also their aspirations. But they can also be read in a way that kind of centers enslaved people, because many of the laws were written in response to enslaved people's resistance and methods of survival. I kind of, when I thought about this website, I thought primarily for research purposes, but it's become a great tool for the classroom as well. So I hope that it can be used in the classroom. As you'll see, you have the ability to kind of see legal development over across time, and space. And it allows scholars to enter into denationalized conversations about the development of laws governing slavery and emancipation. It allows for comparative analysis. And then you can also zone in on laws concerning specific acts or so-called crimes. Um, so I think it can be used for both scholars as well as students. And then I should also say, you can also kind of look at these laws and how they are a reaction to kind of wider Atlantic world events, such as the Haitian Revolution or abolition, amelioration, Tacky's War, etc. Um, I came in with this, I have no tech experience. So I will say, like, anything that looks great about this site is all to do with the librarians and website developers that helped put this website together. I had like a kind of vision of what I wanted the website, but I wanted it to look like, and what I wanted it to be able to do, but I had no knowledge of how to do that. But my team took my vision and put it into this website. I also want to give a shout out to my graduate students, my research assistants, who also took part in this website over the last 8 years, finding laws, transcribing laws, tagging them. They did a host of different kind of tasks. And before I share the website, I'll just say that it's a work in progress. So as I said, it's kind of focused right now on the British Caribbean because that's where my expertise lies. But I'm basically going to start moving up to North America. I have a few North American laws. I titled it Anglo-Atlantic to leave open the possibility of including US slavery laws. I currently have a plethora of laws that I have yet to transcribe. I just need the time and or the money to do so. The website is being updated quite regularly. Okay, so without further ado, I will share my screen. So this is the website. I kind of have to move you guys a little bit over, sorry. Okay. So this is the landing page, and I'll talk you through all the different aspects of the site. So as you can see, there's this little blurb. The laws of enslavement and freedom in the Anglo-Atlantic world is an ongoing project that seeks to provide digital access to the laws governing slavery and freedom in the Anglo-Atlantic world, from the founding laws of the 17th century to the laws that govern emancipation in the 19th century. You can read more about the project by clicking here. And this is where we say a little bit more about the project, and then give thanks to all of those involved. As I mentioned, my research assistants, the library staff, the Social Sciences and Humanities Council of Canada funded this project. I also received funding from my institution, the University of New Brunswick. And then I had the privilege of talking to experts of slavery and slave legislation, who I give thanks to there. So going back to the homepage, you can also read more about you can get to that page through the drop-down menu. There's a page on terms of use, which is just all of our copyright agreements. I give a brief introduction to slavery legislation in the British world, to give students and other users a bit of a background. And then I also have further reading of suggested readings on Anglophone Atlantic world slavery legislation. And then lastly, you can go to see what has been recently updated. You can see that I updated a law about a month ago. Okay, so there are multiple ways to search the site. You can do a title search. So if you know what you're looking for, you can search. This is, of course, the first what people call the comprehensive code, or the founding slavery codes, 1661 Barbados. So I just give a brief kind of abstract on laws that kind of have these histories to them. And then you can see the full transcript there. It's a very long law. Sorry, I hope I'm not making you dizzy by all this scrolling. And then the original source, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. You'll also notice that the law is tagged with, kind of themes. Each law has tags, and I will talk more about that as well in just a moment's time. So that's kind of what a law looks like. If you go back, I'll give you another example. Oops. So this is one from Jamaica, just after the Jamaican Assembly was formed. The original, the transcript, the source. So that's a title search. You can also do a full text search. So I'm searching disabled, and then it'll give you all of the laws and the kind of context in which they use that word. And if you want to see more, you just click on the law, and there it is again. You can also isolate your search by region. So for instance, if I only wanted to look at Antiguan laws, I would just click location Antigua, and then it isolates all of the laws on Antigua. So I can click this one from 1672. It's a short one. Okay, and then if I were to go back, still isolated by region on Antigua, I could then use a tag to even narrow my search even more. So let me give an example. If I wanted to look at free people of color, it would isolate the laws that have been tagged with free people of color um, in Antigua. Okay, so taking off those locations, you can also isolate through a date range. So if you were particularly interested in the ameliorative laws, you could start in the late 18th century and go up to the end of slavery. And all of the laws of this kind of period would come up. Now, they're not necessarily all ameliorative laws, but they've all been passed in that period of history that we associate with the first and second phase of amelioration. And yeah, and then you can find laws that deal with amelioration and other things that are kind of happening in the late 18th and 19th centuries. And then I'll just show you a little bit more here, staying on this site, or sorry, this law. So as I noted, you can expand the transcription here. You can also download the transcript by clicking this button, and it'll just download to your computer. And you can also see the original and download it by clicking there, and it'll open into another window here. So this is useful to, if you notice errors in transcription, of course, I hope you would notify me, but this is where you can kind of compare our transcription to the original source. And then also, if you're using the website, you can also copy the citation here. It'll copy to your clipboard, and then you can use it in your scholarship or classrooms. Okay, the other feature of the website is tags. So you can click here. These are kind of keywords that are referenced in the primary text. This list could be endless, and it was at one point a lot longer than this. But we just tried to condense it specifically for like website related issues with having too long of a list. So these are keywords that are in slavery law, and then you can click on them and kind of see all of the laws pertaining to that particular tag. So for instance, rebellion and conspiracy brings up all the laws pertaining to rebellion and conspiracy. You can also amend that even more, refine it by adding a title or a year or a kind of combination. You wanted laws that pertain to enslaved children. That's another tag, and so forth. The last feature of the website is the map. So I kind of thought about this map. This map, well, I can tell you more about it if you're interested, but it was a bit of a struggle to figure out how best to do this. But essentially, if you wanted to look at the actual places that you're studying, you can click on this little button for Barbados, and then see all of the laws on Barbados. And then you can click on them to see them more. So that's another option for searching. So multiple ways to search the laws. And then you can also get to the map here. and then we have a contact and contribute page. It's always been my hope that this would become a collaborative project, that scholars would become more involved, and hopefully at some point it can just continue to grow, maybe become trans-imperial, and so anyone interested, oh, I have this law and a transcription, they can always email, and of course we would make sure that a contribution is made to that scholar on the website. So that's the kind of website tour. I realize I can't see your questions while I'm presenting, so I don't know if I've missed anything.
And just a reminder again, folks, put your questions in the chat if you'd like, or just raise your hand. There is a question or two in the chat, but actually before I ask those, I was wondering if you could just let us know. Thanks so much for that, because that's amazing. Terrific site, and what a lot of beautiful work. Just curious, for the initial build, so all the meetings you must have had with folks about the design and just getting information to them, and then having vetting the information, making sure proofreading the information, so to speak, making sure it all cross-referenced the right way, choosing the tags, making sure the tags are consistent, all that stuff that goes into this kind of work. About how long did that take?
Oh man.
Yes.
So I guess the project, so I was collecting laws for many years, but the website portion of this project really started in 2020.
Okay.
So I'd say it took probably a good 3 years to figure out all of the different kind of elements of the site. And like tagging was a real stumbling block. We originally had thought about having categories and tags. So categories being like comprehensive laws or ameliorative laws. But that got too complicated because some laws overlap or they don't fit into a category. And then, the tagging, similarly, with anything, there's going to be kind of overlap on some of the tags, and our list was incredibly long to begin with, and we kind of had to find different kind of keywords that would bring some things together. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is
Yeah, so it took a long time.
a long time, right? Yeah. So it looks like Anne Good wants to know what the platform is called that you're
Oh,
working with.
it's called, the platform, like what website?
Or
I
Yeah,
see.
like is it like a Square or WordPress, or it looks like it's much, much more complicated.
No, I don't think it is like WordPress, or actually I know it's not. It was built through my institution, like the digital humanities department. So I think it's not one of those kind of sites that you can, pay to use. Yeah, I think it allows for a lot more kind of complicated searching, and yeah.
all right, and Hal Friedman noticed that on the tags list, like there's just like it's alphabetized except for one thing. So I
Yeah,
guess
I saw
that just
that.
brings the question, that I mean, that to me is interesting, because this is always the kind of stuff I think when doing these projects
Oh
where
yeah.
you're not just dealing with the creation of the tags and the choices, which is hard enough, right? But or in some ways, how do you index, really is it's a different version of indexing, right? In
Yep.
some ways, but like these, the things happen that are just finicky and weird and hard. So I don't know if you have an immediate answer to Hal's question about why that's there, but I guess my larger question then too is sort of what's the arrangement, just for all the folks who are thinking of doing things like this, what's your arrangement for who then has to go in and fix that or change that, or like updates, maintenance, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, so I do have I have quite a bit of uh, capacity to add laws, to edit laws. But there's a lot of other like behind the scenes. So like um the I also can the pages of the website, I can access the pages kind of behind the scenes. But then there's a lot that the library can only do. So things like the date range and the geographic places, the tags, the map, like images. I would have to ask them to help me out with that. So we're still in good contact. Like and they've just been incredible. And yeah, so I still have to contact them for, changes to certain aspects of the website.
Okay. All right, thanks. That looks like Michael Becker has a question.
Mhm.
Thanks very much for this interesting presentation, fascinating website. How do you decide which version of a law to include if there are several available variations?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have tried, so Michael, are you referring to um like multiple kind of manuscripts of the exact same law or just like a slight amendment to a law?
Several manuscripts of the same
Yeah.
or several printed versions where they all
Mhm.
claim to be the accurate version.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to manuscripts, I mean, part of it is, what I've been able to find. But I have sought to find the earliest laws, especially when it comes to printed sources. Like if I can find the manuscript version of that source, I'll include that instead of the printed source. Um, but it's a good question, and it does make me think. I mean, I'm sure there are scholars who are interested in those kind of, minor differences between laws, and as you say, people who claim to have the original or the correct version of the law. And so it might be worth. Right now, you can only include one original image. You can't include, like, I couldn't include a printed and a manuscript um, as the website is built right now. It's not to say that that couldn't change because I could see value in that.
Okay. And from Alyssa Mount Pleasant, actually, Alyssa, this is a lot. This is a much more articulate version of my follow-up question. Alyssa says, I was just talking with a colleague about the longevity of digital humanities projects. Yeah, something very much on my mind as well. I'm wondering if you've had any conversations about this related to your exciting and important project. And I would add, as part of my follow-up, have you signed anything like an MOU, or has anybody talked about that? Like, is there any formal agreement?
Hmm.
But also just, yeah,
Um,
have conversations about it either.
in terms of longevity, so I received funding from what we call SSHRC, the Social Sciences Humanity Council, and that really was able to get the website off the ground. That money has now run out, so now it's really like me, finding time to transcribe laws and upload them. But I intend to apply for another grant to keep the website going. And I think that's really the answer to the longevity of digital projects, especially ones that you're, constantly updating, is that you either need time or funding to hire graduate students to work on projects like this. Um, and in terms of like, I'm not sure, Martha, if I'm going to answer your question, or if I'm not getting at your question correctly, but the website is kind of right now it's kind of housed with the University of New Brunswick because that's where I am. But if I were to move, the website would move with me.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting thing. That actually, that's a component, I guess, of what I was wondering. Yeah, this is something that, like I said, has been on my mind, and I think on many people's minds. Just sometimes when these projects are created, it's exactly that kind of question, right? I mean, if you
Mhm.
institutions, where does it go?
Yeah.
Also things
Yeah.
like, yeah, if there is a gap in the funding, is there somebody at the library system that's going to be responsible for just getting the updates done, things like that? Yeah.
Right. Right.
Um,
And
yeah.
it's interesting, like the library staff, they and the website developers, they've been so keen on like continuing to work with me because they said that like people get these grants to do online projects and then they really just never come to fruition, at least in their experience. So they're just happy that someone has actually kind of, seen this through. And, so far they've been very generous with their time and with the website. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And I see, Alyssa, you have an add-on wondering about hosting and maintenance over the course of years. Do you feel like that was answered for you, or are you asking for further elaboration? So,
I was glad to hear that it will move with Stephanie with Professor Hunt-Kennedy. I have my own experience of basically losing a project, and I share that as with people as a cautionary tale. But I think all of the expense of hosting and maintenance, and it sounds like you have some important agreements in place. So thanks for sharing that with
Yes.
us.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, and it was one of my first questions, like, if I'm going to put all this work into it. Yeah.
from Kirsten Stewart, sorry. Do you have a way to share more information about your tagging and indexing rubrics? Is there a way to easily order and export the data using geographic and/or date tags?
I'll just share my screen and maybe this will um, answer your question. So if you were to use a tag, there's no way to kind of download this list. I mean, you could potentially print it if you wanted, all the laws pertaining to the age of enslaved people. And I believe the same goes with uh, the search. So similarly, like if you only wanted Jamaican laws, there's no export at this point. But it's a good point, like to be able to kind of download a list of laws that the website currently holds.
Yeah, no, and it just a follow up. I'm dipping my toe back into this area after being out of the field for quite some time, but I'm struck by the proliferation of things with overlapping data. And it seems like if we could, as historians, think about getting some consistent ways to do that, it would lend itself to preservation, but it would also lend itself, like, I would love to have a master list of freedom suits and everybody collects their own little sets for their own little region. It would be interesting to be able to, and I don't know if I had to step out for a bit, but I'm sure you're going to be hearing more from Michael and Holly, who have a somewhat similar project going on, the Slavery Law and Power project at University of Maryland. I mean, it seems like we have ways in which it would be good to be coordinating the kind of data we're collecting for longer term kind of overlap and preservation issues. So looks like a great project, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like that could be an interesting project in and of itself to get a grant for, right? Like, see if there's some way to have an aggregator product almost, right? Or something that like a project that looks at how to tag the others or pull in others. Yeah. All right, from Anne, good. I think you were addressing some of this question before, but about what the sources are both manuscript and transcribed, or have some that are just the manuscripts digitized, which I think that you were saying yes, right?
So there's manuscript, archival manuscript sources and laws that were, often in the 18th century digitized, often in collections. So the website has both published, printed sources and manuscripts.
Yeah. And dare I ask, have you ever used anything that's like a I suppose it'd be some sort of AI powered something that like will try, you know, kind of create a rough transcription and then go through it and correct it sort of thing? Or is, I mean, is
Yeah,
that just
like
too much of a
like
mess?
OCR.
Yeah. Or,
Yeah.
yeah.
We tested it on the printed sources early on. But my graduate students and I just found it was a lot faster to just transcribe. You know, how many like S's are F's and, you know, F's are S's, and, you know, it was actually a little bit more you know, kind of, I think it left more possibility for error to use the OCR and then go back through and edit and make sure that you know, edited out all of the errors, then just transcribe it. So that's what we chose to do. So it may have taken us longer, but we felt it was more yeah, that it was just kind of a safer option for transcription.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard that from a few different projects. That was the same, that
Mhm.
that it actually takes more time to have
Yeah,
this initial thing right and have to go back and read and clean and correct.
yeah, exactly.
From Suzanne Francis Brown, congrats on the site. What do you do about getting the word out? This is a great question, something I think about a lot too. For instance, to researchers and students in the formerly British Caribbean. So yeah, like how do you just publicize these things, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that is a good question. I would ask you the same thing. I'm not a social media user. So I think I was occasionally using Twitter when I first got the grant, so I could say, "Hey, I'm doing this." But I don't I haven't publicized, you know, in that way. Certainly, I think publicizing it through you know, HNet listservs could be useful. Um, I had this you know, I kind of hoped that like the project would be even more developed by the time I could start sharing it. But I've kind of let that perfectionism go. It's a work in progress. You know, I'm going to continue to upload laws, but in the meantime, you know, there's I think close to 400 laws on the website right now. So, you know, people might as well use it, even if there are still lots of laws that I haven't uploaded yet. So, but so all of that is to say is I could definitely be better at publicizing it. Um, and, you know, me signing on to this was part of that, like, you know, pushing myself to get the word out. Yeah.
No, which is great. No, thanks so much for coming on. And honestly, I would invite anybody on the call here in the Zoom who has a site to just jump in with how they have promoted things and where. And I know we have some editors of publications, different things here. Thinking of you, Josh Greenberg, with Commonplace, and just, you know, folks who maybe think in different ways of like how you might write about this, what you might do with it, different ways to both promote stuff, but yeah, promote the usefulness of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really, it's very tough, and they are such labors of love, and they are things in progress at all times. So I think that's
Yes.
That can be very that can be great for my guess is for teaching, to show that it's like a work in progress, but also because I think sometimes students want something authoritative or final or closed set of data, so to speak. Right.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit difficult. Yeah.
And that's also why you know, I welcome collaboration, because, you know, I realize I'm only, you know, one person, and I know there are many, you know, archives that I haven't been to, and uh yeah, that we all kind of collect different things, and different sources are on our radar. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So any other questions for Stefanie or further thoughts? Yeah. All right, just making sure I'm seeing. Okay. All right, well, if there are no further questions, maybe I'll just let you get back to what I am sure is a busy day, but thank you all so much for coming out. Again, if you have a project yourself that you would like to present next semester or know some folks, please do suggest them. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Stefanie, for presenting, and this was great. So thanks.
Thank you.
All
Thanks so
right.
much.